Welcome to IB Exam Revision. This video is about unemployment in economics. So first, a quick overview. What is unemployment and how is it measured is what we will go through first. Then we will explain why is it an issue, and then we'll go in turn through each type of unemployment. First, disequilibrium unemployment, and then equilibrium unemployment. Then we will explain the diagrams and the solutions to each type that you'll need to know for the exams. And finally, we'll talk about crowding out, which is an effect related to unemployment and the solutions to it. So what is unemployment? The International Labour Organization, which you should remember for your exam, defines unemployment as the people of working age who are without work, available for work, and actively seeking work. So these pieces of text emphasized in bold are the main points of the definition of unemployment that you should remember. So unemployment can also be defined more mathematically as the unemployed people in the labor force divided by the total labor force. And so if you want the unemployment rate, you just express that in a percentage, so you multiply that fraction by 100. So how is unemployment measured? Actually, there's no global consensus on measuring unemployment. For example, in Austria, the number of people registering as unemployed is the number used, whereas in Belgium, the number of people claiming unemployment benefits are used. Clearly, we have some problems with the measuring of unemployment. For example, there could be inaccuracy in data of national surveys and records. Also, we need to consider incentives. For example, why would you register as unemployed in Belgium if there are no unemployment benefits for you to be had? Also hidden unemployment. For example, long-term unemployed people who have given up the search for jobs are no longer considered unemployed, as well as underemployed people. For example, someone working a part-time job but would prefer a full-time job are not considered unemployed. And finally, overqualified people. For example, if you are well educated and you have a job, but you're not really utilizing the skills that you have. So that's hidden unemployment. Finally, there's the distribution of unemployment that isn't considered in the regular unemployment rate. For example, the geography, where is the unemployment in the country, the age groups who are unemployed, the ethnicity, and the gender. So why is unemployment even an issue? First of all, it's costly for the economy. Second of all, it's costly to the unemployed themselves. The standard of living issues, stress and depression are often occurrences in long-term unemployed people at least. And this makes it, of course, even harder to find a job. Also, there's large cost to society as unemployment rates are inevitably linked, though not necessarily the cause of crime, poverty, etc. And to the general economy as well. As mentioned, for example, you could consider a PPC curve where the economy isn't producing at full capacity. So the types of unemployment. We consider two broad categories, disequilibrium and equilibrium. Disequilibrium unemployment is when the labor market is blocked from reaching its equilibrium. There are two types of disequilibrium unemployment. There's real wage, which is called classical, and then there's demand deficient, or called cyclical. Equilibrium unemployment is when the labor market is in equilibrium, but people are still unemployed. So the number of job vacancies is equal to the number of people looking for work. There are three types of equilibrium unemployment. These are frictional, seasonal, and structural. Before introducing each type of unemployment, we look at the basic labor market diagram. Here we can see the number of workers is on the x-axis and the average real wage rate is on the y-axis. The wage is settled by the equilibrium between the aggregate supply of labor and the aggregate demand for labor. This is also what settles the quantity of workers employed at any given time. The aggregate demand for labor is defined as the total demand for labor at every given average wage rate. And the aggregate supply of labor is defined as the total number of the economy's workers willing and able to work at every given average wage rate. Right, so the first type of disequilibrium unemployment we'll look at is real wage or classical. And this is unemployment caused by trade unions and government minimum wages interfering with the labor market. And we can see the regular labor market diagram shown below with number of workers on the x-axis and average real wage rate on the y-axis. And here we have a minimum wage of W1, which leads to Q1 workers being employed and Q2 workers wishing to work at the minimum wage. So we have an excess supply of workers here. And we can see that at WE, which is the equilibrium wage, there'd be a lot less unemployment, only about here between the two quantities. So to solve this issue, the simple answer is to reduce trade union power or remove minimum wages. This, of course, will have some pretty serious consequences on living standards, especially for the low-income workers, which are already the workers or the people in the economy who are worst off. So this is something you should keep in mind if you're evaluating, for example, income equality or income distribution in society in an exam situation. Okay, so the next type of disequilibrium unemployment is demand deficient, cyclical, or Keynesian unemployment. So this type of unemployment is caused by cyclical downturns in the economy, basically meaning a fall in aggregate demand. For example, if the economy is entering a period of slow growth, then aggregate demand is likely to drop. And since aggregate demand is directly related to the firm's aggregate demand for labor, the aggregate demand for labor will drop as well. This is shown in the diagram from ADL1 to ADL2. The interesting thing to note in the diagram is the fact that the wages actually remain at WE here. So the unemployment actually increases quite a bit from B to A, rather than finding an equilibrium here at the wage level of W1. This is because of sticky wages such as mentioned earlier, trade unions, government minimum wages, and so on. So the solution to this type of unemployment is obviously increasing aggregate demand through fiscal policies, like government spending projects or reducing taxes, or monetary policies, for example, decreasing interest rates. The central bank can do that. Okay, so the next type of unemployment is equilibrium unemployment, and we'll first go through the basics. So the basic idea is that there are more people looking for jobs than people willing and or able to take the available jobs. So there are jobs available, and this can be seen in the diagram below here with A to B unemployment existing at the wage level WE. And here we have the aggregate supply of labor intersecting the aggregate demand for labor, which is, as mentioned, what settles the wage level. And we introduce here a new curve called the labor force, which is the total labor force. And if you recall, the aggregate supply of labor is the people willing and able to work at every given wage level. Also notice that as wages increase, the space between the aggregate supply of labor and the labor force decreases, obviously because as the wage level increases, people are going to be attracted to the jobs that are actually there, so they might take an education or settle with a job that doesn't utilize their qualities. Anyway, so we have unemployment from A to B. For example, we could have job vacancies in computer programming, but this does not help unemployed assembly line workers, which may be represented by the LF curve here. So the point to take away is that there are always more jobs than people willing and or able to take the jobs if it's natural unemployment. The first type of natural or equilibrium unemployment is frictional. And this is short-term unemployment occurring because people are either in between jobs or have left education and are waiting to take up a job and the like. And clearly this is a type of natural unemployment. And it's actually not generally perceived to be a negative unemployment, because it's, for example, if you change jobs because you want to better utilize your skills in another job, then you'll be more productive and you'll shift the supply curve of the economy outwards and produce economic growth possibly. If, however, it's perceived to be a problem, it can be reduced by, for example, cutting unemployment benefits, as this might make people more willing to work and therefore will shift the aggregate supply of labor to the right. Or you could improve the flow of information through, for example, job centers and the like, which might help people find their available jobs. The next type of equilibrium unemployment is called seasonal, and this occurs because people are employed on a seasonal basis, and therefore some of them are unemployed in the off-season. For example, a Norwegian ski instructor in July will not have a lot of work and might even be considered unemployed. Or an ice cream stand in Denmark during the winter might have to close down, and therefore the workers are unemployed. And the obvious solution to these issues are to encourage people to take different jobs in the off-season. This could be done by cutting benefits or by increasing information flow, similar to frictional unemployment. Okay, so let's move to the most important form of equilibrium unemployment, structural. This is due to the changing structure of an economy, of course, and this occurs when there is a permanent fall in the demand for a particular type of labor. For example, in a growing economy, there might be more software engineer jobs, while coal miner jobs might disappear and move to other countries where labor is cheaper. This is a very dangerous type of unemployment, as it's typically long-term unemployment. Consider, for example, the coal miner. He wouldn't be able to switch to being a software engineer. And you could state that they lack the occupational or geographic mobility to switch jobs. The geographic mobility, of course, is if there's created jobs in one part of the country, the workers might not be able to just move to that part of the country to get the job. And structural unemployment is caused by new technologies. For example, ATMs, making it unnecessary to have human bank tellers, or lower cost labor in other countries. For example, Italian furniture makers are facing unemployment because of cheap labor in China. Or changes in consumer taste. For example, people might be concerned about the pollution resulting from coal, so that might result in structural unemployment in the coal industry. And if we look here at the diagram, this is structural unemployment in the manufacturing industry in the US. So here we have D going to D2, resulting in a wage drop from $17 to $13 and unemployment from Q1 to Q2. And this is structural unemployment. These manufacturing workers are now probably going to be long-term unemployed, as this will be a permanent fall in the demand for US manufactured goods. Also, this is a good opportunity to distinguish between demand deficient unemployment, as discussed earlier. That's temporary unemployment due to a fall in demand for all labor in the economy, whereas structural employment is a permanent fall in demand for a particular type of labor in the economy. So the solutions to structural unemployment can be both market-based or interventionist, but there will always be supply-side policies, as it's resulting from a permanent change in a particular type of labor. So it will always have to do with increasing occupational mobility or willingness to take the available jobs. So a market-based option could be to reduce unemployment benefits and thereby incentivize people to take the available jobs. Another market-based policy could be to increase labor market flexibility, like deregulating the labor market, removing security regulations, or decreasing trade union power, removing minimum wages, and so on. And it's important to note that market-based policies like this are very burdensome on two groups of people. For example, the people who lose their benefits will obviously have a fall in living standards, especially if they can't actually find a job. And also labor market regulations are typically in place to actually protect the workers. So it can safely be assumed that if they're removed, there might be some issues. And finally, the people that are usually hit by deregulation are the people with the lowest incomes, and thus inequity in society will be increased. Moving on, interventionist policies could be to provide a great educational system that will increase the occupational flexibility of the labor force, or to provide adult retraining programs, to subsidize firms providing training for their employees, or to subsidize people to encourage people to move to areas with jobs. For example, if they get a tax break by moving to another area. And they could make or support internship or apprenticeship programs to develop the actual skills needed in the labor market, for example, as they have in Germany. These policies are also, however, problematic in that they only are very effective in the long run, and that they will have to involve a high opportunity cost, as governments will have to spend money on this kind of thing instead of, for example, healthcare or new roads. Let's look more generally at solutions to unemployment. One thing is important is that the solution always depends on the type of unemployment. For example, consider demand deficient unemployment versus structural unemployment. Demand deficient would obviously be solved by increasing aggregate demand, whereas structural unemployment would need some kind of supply-side policy. Also, demand-side solutions to unemployment can create budget deficits and are never actually guaranteed to help. For example, consider reducing taxes. People might decide to use their extra disposable income to actually save rather than spend, so it might not increase aggregate demand. And also supply-side policy solutions face opportunity cost and it might increase inequity in society if deregulation is the measure taken. And finally, it is actually extremely difficult to distinguish between the different types of unemployment. So usually what governments will do is to use a mixture of policies. For example, they will use some aggregate demand policies, for example, reducing the interest rate, to reduce these business cycle fluctuations, for example, a recession in the economy. And then use supply-side policies to keep moving the long-run aggregate supply to the right and increasing the occupational mobility of the labor force. I've listed here the syllabus points covered in the video: the meaning of unemployment, consequences of unemployment, types and causes of unemployment, including diagrams, definitions, and so thanks for watching. Please subscribe on the YouTube page or check out the page we have on Facebook.